after this evening, oh, thanks, Silas. I forgot. So after our session this evening, I will send you a, PDF file with the entire workbook. So the first part will show this here, just a reminder of what we covered, and the next one will kind of take each of the photos with a before and after, and then kind of explain how we got there. So that's basically how we're going to go through it. But what I'd like to do right now is just go through all the pictures that we took, or that you all took, and just let you kind of look at them and just kind of appreciate your work. If there is a third photograph, and there's about 3 or 4 in here that are, Umit, I sent the photos to Umit. He's the learning workshop chair. And I said, Umit, here's what we got for the show. Do you have any recommendations? And he said he did. So those in the corner right next to you, are you noticing how we're cropping in from the before to the after to get focus? And on this one, nice big area, but look how cropping affects this. Do you see how we're just talking about the sign now? Here's one of the folks shot, I don't know what you call them, a bug. And what I want to show here is how light, if you get your subjects in diffused shading, it'll make it out. This is kind of cool how we fix this one. This is with what we call the radial gradient tour in Lightroom. Very easy to use. We'll show you how to do it. This is a simple trick with just contrast and a little bit of clarity. Watch what happens. See how you get that pop? Now on this one, Umit, this is the first take on it. I like that. This is my take on it. The only thing I cleaned were some blooms up in the top right. And this is Umit's take on it. Umit thought it would be better up and down. All I'm trying to show you here is Umit just had a different take on a couple of these pictures. Here's the original. Here it is cleaned up just a little bit in Lightroom. And this is Umit's take on the photo, the next one. I'm not sure what the difference is, but there's something different. So flowers, you notice how that leaf on the right side is coming in? Is that cool or what? That's called the stamp removal tool. We just took out that leaf that was coming in. Sometimes you just need to kind of kick the clarity and the whites a little bit, and it just gives a completely different feel to the flag. So I wanted to show you that one. So you notice on the left side, there's part of a tree there, left side bottom. Using the stamp tool, we just took that little bit out right there. I see where I missed a little bit of it. My bad. And this is Umit's take. He wanted to zoom in tighter and just kind of get that right there. So here's a nice one with piano. What I opted to do was use the monochrome preset. So it swiped out that kind of yellow in the top right corner, and I cropped it in. And this is Umit's take. He kept the color and just did it a little bit differently. This was a photo taken. We'll show you the trick in the next photo. We're adding a different technique here. So this is the one that I edited, and the next one's what Umit recommended doing. He wanted to keep the curb on the bottom to give a sense of place that it was on the sidewalk. So here's a really nice one over at the farmer's market. And on the next one, you notice we kind of cropped in on the sides and we added a vignette. That's the cool thing about that one. This one, we're going to show you how to add a hue and just rotate the photo a little bit. So we changed it from blue to green, rotated it to kind of give it a nice effect there. And here are some of the final images that some of the people turned in. So Becca turned in a couple. And because Becca and the others turned in finals, I couldn't really do any editing on them because they really were quite good. And she converted this one to black and white. Herman, here's your bug here. Great job of cloak focus. The background was slipping out of focus there. So thanks to all of you who kicked some photos in for us. So let's go and jump to the first one, which was this one. And the only thing I want to, oh, I'm sorry. Let's talk about the tools first. So if you notice over here in Lightroom, I'm just going to make it hopefully a little bit easier to see here, is the library tab is for all your file operations. If you want to move photos in different folders and everything, the library tab is the one you do it. The develop tab is where you do all of your editing. This is very similar to the Adobe Camera Raw that Lori, when you use Photoshop, you bring an image into Photoshop, you may be offered with the ACR first to go and start with your edits on it. I don't know. How is your Photoshop set up? When you bring a photo in, does it go to ACR first or straight in?
I don't have the Photoshop. I just have Lightroom.
Okay. All the work we're doing here this evening, all of this is in Lightroom. There's no Photoshop at all. I figured we need to focus on it. So
focus on classic or just Lightroom?
This is classic. This is classic. Jeff, it's a good point. I think Herman uses the Lightroom for the internet, don't you, Herman?
Yeah, I do use it. I do use the internet one. I'm thinking of changing to the classic, but not yet.
Okay, and that's fair. Everything is almost exactly the same between the two. Where the controls are a little bit different. I haven't taken the Karen. You're using the internet one too, aren't you?
Yes, that's the only one I have.
Okay. Maybe we can get someone who's up on the Lightroom for the Photoshop to maybe offer a follow-on class. But here's the good thing. Everything we covered this evening is also in the other, I think it's called Lightroom Photoshop for the internet version. It's all the same. What the big difference is, your images are not stored on your PC or your hard drives. They're stored up in the cloud. And that's the reason why I think Herman and Laura, you may be too, is that you may have Lightroom only when you pay the $10 a month. And the reason why it's Lightroom only is because you're getting this huge storage area up on the web. If you opt for Lightroom Classic and Photoshop, it's the same price, $10, but you're still getting a little bit of web file storage, but it's not terrible. But on the other one that's Lightroom only for Photoshop only, I think it's Photoshop only. I don't know. I don't do the version, but just I'm trying not to confuse you. But when you say Lightroom, it means different things to different people. This evening, we're talking about Lightroom Classic, where the PC, let me just do it this way, where the images are on your PC. It could be an external hard drive. It could be an internal one. If you have a LAN, local area network set up in your house, and you can share the drives, you'll see those files as well. But most of us probably have like an external hard drive where we back up our photos to, which is an excellent idea. So a couple of things I'd like to cover with you is within Lightroom and almost all Adobe and all Microsoft projects, if you think of the letter Z as the last letter, just think of it that way. So Control Z on a PC means you want to undo your last action. So if you do something in Lightroom or Photoshop or Microsoft Word and you go, oops, I didn't mean to do that, just press Control Z and you can undo your last action. I use it probably once or twice every time I'm editing an image, because I do something I don't want to do, and rather than going to history and clicking down that way, I just do Control Z. If you got a Mac, it's Command Z. It's the same, just instead of CTRL, it says, I don't know, what's it say in a Mac, CMD or something? Okay. Couple quick things. Whenever you're in Lightroom, the first thing that you want to work on is the entire image. So if the entire image is dark and you want to lighten it up a little bit, then you want to do everything in the basic module. So the basic module is only, so the basic module is right up here at the very top. Remember where Jeff was starting to play around with right here? See where it says basic? You can, almost everything you're going to do in Lightroom, 70% of it is right up in here. This is where you change your exposure, your shadows, your highlights, your sharpening, presence is sharpening, and saturating your image as well. It's all done right here. The one thing I want to leave with you, the basic module, you're talking to the entire image. So if I change the exposure here, I'm talking to the entire image. So that's the basic. The basic is everything. So the basic is to affect the entire image. You have the basic module. And then you have this nice thing called the HSL. In the last photo where we do the water fountain, we change it from blue to green. All we're doing is we're going to the hue. And let's see, this flower is yellow. So I'm going to change it to a different hue. See how it only talks to that color, and you can change hues just by doing this. I'd stay out of here unless you feel comfortable with it, but I'm letting you know when you use the HSL color module, it's talking to everything. Color grading, stay out of here unless you know what you're doing. I don't, I stay out of it. Lens correction, if you set it up when, let's say, for example, Hylos, you have the D700, right, Hylos?
Yes, I do.
So when Hylos brings his images in, if he enables his profile to be Nikon D700, it applies different things to the image. Not required. Most of the times it figures it out for you automatically. But that's kind of everything. Transform is kind of cool. How many times have you taken a building where the top of the building is kind of going in like this? With transform, guess what? You can straighten those out pretty good. So that's what we'll do. We'll do an exercise on that one as well. And finally, post-crop vignetting. Here's the magic number, -11. If you have anything that's, watch what happens when they, please don't look at the slider, just look at the image. Watch what happens when I go to -11. Well, I'm pretty close to -11 right now. You're saying, well, Pat, that doesn't look like very much. Okay, still look at just the image and watch what happens. See, by just taking just a little bit of the exposure off the edge, it gives it a nice soft vignette that most people will not pick up on. If you get crazy with vignettes and go to like 25, see how you can start seeing the black going around? Sometimes that's a very interesting effect, but most of the time people just get, I won't say get annoyed by it, but it doesn't have the effect that you may want it to. So that's pretty much all of the modules that going up. That was the effects module. That was the transform module. Remember we did the color, the HSL color. And finally, the basic are the ones that you'll do that talk to the entire image. Are you guys cool with that? Any questions?
Got one
No question.
comment.
Okay.
About showing them how to collapse all those where there's just one of those things working.
Okay, if you right click on this and choose right here on any of the modules, it doesn't matter which one. If you right click on it, you can go to solo mode. And what Hylos is saying, see how it just shows basic now? So it doesn't show all the others basically collapse. But when I click on, say, for example, transform, you see how transform expanded and all the other ones collapse. So sometimes if you feel comfortable just looking at one module at a time, Han Solo or the solo mode may be the one just for you. And to kind of get to it, any of the module headers, you just right click and click on solo mode. And that's how it works. So you notice right now I clicked on basic, but if you could scroll down, you'll see transform as being active. I typically only use 2 or 3 of these modules anyway, so it's just as easy for me to go down. But Hylos, you're right, that's a good tool. I'm sorry, I think someone had a question. Okay. If you want to talk to specific areas, and Jeff, thank you for letting us use your little girl by the fountain. That was a perfect segue in. If you notice right here, see how there's a toolbar going across, it has those icons. Those icons are the tools that talk to a specific area of the image. So here's your cropping tool that Jeff showed us. Let me show you one thing that you have to know right away. If you want to crop it yourself without keeping the aspect ratio, you have to unlock your lock. See, if I lock it, watch what happens when I go in. See how it keeps the aspect on both sides as it goes down? So whatever aspect you're looking for, it keeps that aspect of it. So this is 24 by 36 or 3 by 2. And if you just do it this way, it kind of keeps that same thing. But let's say for example, I'm cropping down to here. And I want to get that little bit extra on the left side there. If I pull this out, it gets bigger on the bottom too, which I don't want. So what I would do is click on your lock and it unlocks it, and then you can, okay. Okay, I'm not sure what just happened there. Okay. And then you can kind of include that little bit of tip up at the very top. So just a little tip for you there is with your crop tool, you can lock it. It'll keep the aspect ratio the same all the way through, or you can unlock it and you can do it however you want. So if I just wanted to show the flowers, I have to go up here and unlock it so I can kind of get that effect. Okay, you guys cool with it? So that's the crop tool. Here's where the magic happens. This is kind of a new thing for us, is we have healing brushes. And the healing brushes typically act on an area. So if you notice when Jeff was in there, remember he was doing the brush and it painted like a circle and colored it red. This does it a little bit differently, but there's 3 different healers. The first one is a content aware. It was just added about 4 or 5 months ago. That's where the program tries to figure out what you want to do. The healing brush is the second magic tool. And the third one is called the stamp tool. We'll show you all these. I just want you to be aware whenever you click on it. And all 3 are different. But here's the great thing about it. So Lori, let's say, for example, you want to use the healing tool and you want to use the content aware to where you kind of remove this white flower up here. So you kind of go up here and you do it. And after you do it, see where it added something different? Well, you can change to another brush. And with that brush, it shows you what the effect is. So with the healing brush, you just kind of move it around to where you want the healing brush to sample from. Your stamp tool is very similar, but it just has it's a little bit smarter than everything. Here's the last thing I want to show you here on these tools is the feathering. The feathering is around the edge, how much you want it to kind of soften off. Remember back when we were doing some work on some of the other workshops, we wanted to feather the edge, so the fall off was kind of gradual. This is how you set the feathering right here. I typically leave mine on about 50, and then my opacity, what opacity means is how much of that brush do I want to show through. Watch what happens when I drop it down to 50. See how the flower starts coming back? So this means you can kind of soften it a little bit, or just kind of do whatever you want right there. So it's a nice way to play with it. And with the masking tool, that is the extreme tool to get exactly what you want. So within masking tool, remember when Jeff did it, he clicked on it and we used the subject to where we got the girl's face. It's pretty good. It works good, but I'd say 75% of the time, I just use the brush tool to kind of isolate my subject. So let's say, for example, I want to mask just the flower exactly like Jeff was doing. And if you roll your mouse, you can get a bigger red on here. I'm being ugly, but you'll get the idea. And then I'm holding down the alternate key. See how it changes to a minus sign? And then you can go back through and kind of take it this way. So Lori, this is a great tip for you to kind of go through when you're crazy too much on what you want to select.
Okay.
So are you seeing how the masking tool is much more exact than the stamp tool, which just kind of copies information? This is saying, I want to talk to it and I want to do specific things. And here they are right here. You can change the exposure. It's almost like the basic module, very, very similar right up here. It's very confusing. Let me tell you this. You're going to screw up at least 500 times on this. Whenever you have the masking tool initiated, there are 3 kind of subcategories here that are only for the mask. So if you notice, you can change different things here. But watch what happens when I go down one more. See, here's the basic. So watch what happens. You think it's red, right? Watch what happens when I lower the exposure. You see how it talks to everything in there? It's very confusing that whenever you use a mask, there's additional modules that are added above there that just watch what happens now when I lower the exposure on this. Yeah, okay, here we go. So this is the sliders exposure. You see how it's just talking to what I masked? So that's kind of confusing. Everyone screws up for at least 500 times on there. They just don't realize they go down too far. And when you go down to the basic module, you're talking to the entire image. Whereas when you have the mask enabled, you're only talking up here.
I'm
Any
wondering,
questions?
yeah, I'm
Karen.
wondering where the done button is, because usually when I'm playing with masks, there's a done button on the lower right-hand side, so I can get out of it, but I'm not seeing it right now.
Yeah, done is gone.
They took that
Oh.
done button away.
It's gone.
What do
Okay,
you do?
there are 2 ways to get out of it. One is to click on this tool, which goes back to the general edit. Watch what happens when I click. If you notice, all the additional stuff that was up there is gone. So if you're in the masking tool, the other way is just to click on the mask tool and see how it goes away. And now the general edit is what's visible right now. So to answer your question, Melissa, that's what happened with the done tool.
Thank you.
No, it was confusing for me too, and a boatload of people. Any other questions? I'm covering this very quickly. We have a cheat sheet in a workbook that tries to explain this as well. So I'm just trying to give you kind of like an orientation where everything is in.
So what does foundationally what does mask do? Mask is allowing you to select a specific region within the picture. Is that
Exactly. So whenever you click on mask, I'm going to kill this one so that we don't have anything in our mask. So now whenever I click on mask, see how it gives you what technique do you want to use to mask your image? You're going to find subject works absolutely perfect with people. It's very, very good. The brush tool is very good for like flowers. Let me just cover this one because it's very cool and very new. It's called objects. What it is, you get a big paintbrush and you paint with this thing like this. So what I'm doing is, you notice I'm kind of going near the edges, but I'm not spending a lot of time because this is magic.
Hard to hear. There's a lot of background noise from somebody.
So if you notice right now, it picked up everything that was kind of that gold color, but it missed the Jeff Estes. So we'd have to click on the plus sign, go down the brush, and add these other little white areas right here onto it right there. See how you have to kind of add to it? So Jeff, all that thing we did with your girl by the fountain was absolutely a-okay because it helps explain how the brush is. So now when I change the exposure, we're talking to everything within that mask. Does that help make it a little bit clearer, Anand?
Yeah, and now, like Melissa mentioned, there is no done. So, but I saw in Jeff's case, there were 2 mask layers, I guess. In your case, there's one there. So how are you committing the changes?
Yeah, so if you click right here on the mask icon, it's a toggle switch. So if you click it, it turns it off. If you click it, it turns it on. The other one is the edit tool is a way to get out of your mask tool. You're saying you want to go back to the general edit right there. And that's
if you did the exposure change and you said, okay, now I'm done. So you
okay.
just click on.
Okay, so I'm going to change everything to white.
Yeah.
On this guy, which I think is what you're saying. So I've truly blown it out. So everything that was in the mask is contained right there. And you want to get out of the mask?
No,
Two ways.
I want you to stick the changes. So you did whatever changes you wanted, like increase the exposure, change the contrast, right? All those things. Now, I want you to commit those changes to that flower. So how are you going to do it? You just press that button where your cursor is now?
Yeah, if you want to get out of masking, you just press that. If you want to add another mask, you would click on the plus sign right here. So let's say, for example, I want to add that white flower. I would just click on the brush. I have another brush right now. See how it's painting? I'm going to be kind of gross about it. Okay, so Lori, please forgive me for what I did. You see how the 2 masks are kind of added together?
Correct.
So you can add to the mask by clicking that button right there.
Yeah, you add it now. Now, how do you ensure all of those are becoming part of that whole picture?
Yep. You just get out of masks.
Okay,
Lightroom does it. So just click on that mask button or click on the general edit button right there. Either of those 2 will get you back.
Pat?
Anand, are
Yeah.
you asking about exports? Like how it becomes a final picture? Is that what you're asking?
Correct. Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. Well, if I wanted to export the image, what you do is you just right click on the thumbnail. Let's say I have 5 images I want to kick out as JPEGs. So you hold down the shift key.
So Pat, your changes are now, how do I see your changes before I say export this, save it and export? So for this particular picture, the flower picture, you made
Just go to library and then that'll show you where they export from there.
and it will save the changes that Pat made. Is that right?
Correct. I'm sorry, Pat, but yes, I think so. And also make one more comment. That second mask that you put on this one, if you go back to the mask, click on the second mask, that's going to be separate. You can run the exposure to dark and instead of the white and watch it, it's different. So you can do several, 5 or 6, 10 masks all in one picture.
It's really handy.
Yeah, yeah. And now you can save this picture with your changes, exposure changed and made one white one into a black one. So, okay. So all you have to do is click that button once more, maybe edit, and then say export. Then it will save the changes. Yeah.
Yeah, so right now, let me get out of masking back into general. So on this one, I wanted to increase the shadows a little bit to everything. All I would do is whatever's highlighted down here. It's like, remember Jeff had 93 photos selected. If you click export at that point, how many photos do you think are going to be exported out?
All the 93.
93. So whatever your border here is kind of light, that's telling you, and the words are right here. Watch what happens when I click on just 2 of them. See where it says right there? It says 2 selected. So that's letting you know there's 2 that I want to export. So you just right click and go to export right here. And then you can go up to export and just do it wherever.
I normally would go back to library, and then from there you'll see the export in the bottom left of the screen.
Ilis, I'm not sure about that. Can you help me what you're thinking here?
Are you asking?
See the word export?
Yeah. Oh, export here.
Yeah, then there.
Yeah, it's the same thing. It's the same thing. Hey, Melissa, it's just like when you were asking about the enhance feature, how I right click on an image. Adobe set it up where a lot of your commonly used functions you go to are available whenever you right click on different things.
Nice
So-
to know.
Yeah, Ilis is absolutely right. So I want you to, so I'm going to click on this for export. Dun, 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 dun. There it is. Watch what happens when I right click and go export. That's the same thing, right? So it's just 2 ways to get to the same function.
Now, if I bring that photo back after 2 days, will it contain those mask layers, or it will not contain the mask layers any longer?
Are you talking about when you export it?
When you import it back after 2 days, say you exported today, this picture, right? And 2 days later, you bring this photo back for some more editing.
Okay, I would never bring it back because your photo's right here. So if you want to make changes to it, you just make changes on this photo and just export it again.
And when I say mask, will it show the mask 1 and mask 2 layers here, or it will not show anymore?
Oh, yeah, well, the masks stay with this forever. Now, unfortunately, I went through, yeah, see, there they are right there. Now, in your JPEG that you exported, this will not be in the export. It's just a regular JPEG or a TIFF file or a DNG.
But you could get rid of the mask if you go back to the left under history before you created it, right?
Yeah.
If for some reason you wanted to start over, that's the beauty of history, right?
You can go
Okay,
history.
that's one of the few things I understand.
No, that's
Or just
super.
hit reset.
Yeah. Now reset will go all the way back to the very beginning.
Right.
So if you're
Beginning,
doing
yeah.
other things, okay. So here's a question for you. If you remember, we did some cropping, then we did some masking. If you use Jeff's approach, where you go to history, where you go back a little bit, will that only delete the stuff above there? And the answer is yes. If you
What I
go to
thought.
reset down here in the bottom
It's
right hand
everything.
corner, see it right here?
Okay.
If you hit reset, it's in that history and it goes all the way to the bottom. So okay, well, watch what happens when I hit reset. With reset, it should take you. See, unfortunately, these are the images I worked on for the class. So if I were, so here's what it looked like. Really? Okay, and that's right. So whenever you hit reset, it just takes you back to the very bottom level of your history. It's just like Jeff said. If you want to delete just the masks, I would recommend you just click on mask. Mask. Oh, that's right. I wiped them all out.
Yeah.
So if you click on here, it'll put everything back in.
The way I think about Lightroom is that it stores the edits that you do, but it's non-destructive. It doesn't actually change anything. It just saves the actions that you applied to it. Once you export it, and I make another folder that says Lightroom edits inside my folder, I keep the original, but then I make another folder just for my Lightroom edits. And then when I export the pictures into that new folder, that's when it becomes flattened and the edits are applied. But anytime you come back into Lightroom, it's like you never did it, that it'll just store the edits, but it's not permanent. Does that make sense?
Okay,
Yeah.
so it keeps the trail of changes, Melissa, right? That's what you're saying.
It keeps
Yeah.
what?
Trail of changes, trail of changes.
Yeah, it keeps track of the changes that you made. And
Yeah,
even if you cropped it, if you went back to the cropping tool again, you could recrop it. You could change your crop, which I actually love. I wish Adobe Photoshop would make it that easy. But it's not permanent. It's non-destructive.
For perfectionists like Pat, where you're just not quite happy and you want to go back again.
Guilty. Guilty. Okay, so are you guys ready with just kind of running through? Oh, the other thing I'm going to show you is on the left side. Presets. Presets are cool. This is where if you move your cursor over, you click on presets. Watch what happened when I click on, say, for example, PL06. See how it's giving it a different effect to the image?
Mhm.
So you can look at all these different presets that are kind of happening here just by, it's just kind of a nice way whenever you get the photo, just like you like it, but it's missing just a little something you can't figure out. Just go and play with the presets. Now, this is just like YouTube. It's like a black hole. You can spend a boatload of time here, but you'll find over time you'll have different ones that are kind of like your favorite. Say, for example, I really don't use the edgy presets that come bundled with Adobe. You can hit the toggle and you can close it so you don't have to look at them all the time. If I don't like retro, so you can kind of shrink it if you don't really use them. But they're all here in case you want to open it up again. So
Can you rename them?
I don't think so. No. Actually, a good question, Jeff. I never thought about it, but no.
But you can also buy more presets.
Yep.
And you can make your own.
Yep. Yep. Yeah, there are a boatload of people who want to make money by you buying their presets.
Oh, yeah.
I've never bought them, but you see it all the time. Okay, if I can, let me kind of slip through this kind of quickly. So here is the before, and here is the after. So what's different here? How did we make this one just a little bit better? Going from here to here. Better yet, let me show it to you.
Did you use luminosity?
Yep, I sure did.
Oh,
But what
it
tool
looks
did I
smoother.
use to isolate the flower, do you think?
The crop tool.
Well, the crop tool I did use, Rob, you're right. See in the
Yeah.
right one, I don't see that flower in the bottom left corner, right down there. So I cropped all that stuff out.
Oh,
The eye is focused
Okay.
just on the bloom.
Oh, the Band-Aid, the healing.
I use a mask. So what I did was I masked the flower, and then just like you guys saw, remember when I did the object mask, it didn't pick up this white stuff right here. So I had to do another mask and I added the white to it. And then you're absolutely right. I used, I think you guys are saying luminosity. I just raised the exposure just a little bit.
okay.
And that's all we did differently there. That's it.
I use luminosity to smooth out grain when my photos are too grainy. It smooths them out just a little bit. You got to be careful with it because it'll make them look smeary. I've done
Oh.
that before.
Well, Melissa, you're going to love Adobe's denoise function. It's
Yeah.
there when you right click and go to enhance. If
Mhm.
it's a raw file, it's only with raw files. You can do the denoise function, which does a great job of removing noise and sharpening your image just a little bit.
Good to know.
It's very good. But it's only right now for raw files. It won't do it for JPEGs or anything else. Okay, so let's take a look at this one. I'm sorry, here we go. So here is the before, here is the after. Give me a second, we'll get there. So what did we do here to make the image just a little bit more interesting?
Big crop.
What's the one thing I didn't do? Actually, Uma did this one. What's the one thing? It'll be really kind of screwy, but if you look on the left edge, see how the window is kind of tilting in a little bit? I don't know if the transform tool would straighten just that and keep the light pole straight, but I think that's the only thing I would do different. When I did it, I cropped pretty severely like Omid did right here. The only difference I did is I cropped the sky out. So my crop went down to about here, but I kind of like how Omid kept a little bit of the sky there. So if you notice on the right-hand side, he cropped on the right side as well to knock that out. Any questions on this one?
Mhm.
No.
I don't think I did anything else, really. It looks like it may have lightened it just a little bit, because if you look at the red flowers, see how the red flowers are just a little bit lighter, along with the guy's black t-shirt.
Brings down the details in the brick too.
Yeah, I thought maybe he added texture or something.
Yeah, it looks totally different in that sense.
Okay, this one has absolutely no edits. It's two different photographs. So if Herman and Joyce and Joy and I, we were right there by the music stage. And while we were talking, I can't remember who looked down and said, "Oh, look at this bug." And I had no idea how big that puppy was. And just saw this thing, it's probably about this big. And it wouldn't move. So it's like, shoot my picture, shoot my picture. But the one thing I want to show here is whenever you take photos, try and get your subject in some sort of shade. Because if you look here, you see how the tones are really sharp. Whereas on this one, it's a lot softer. And if you notice when we went through and showed some of the works at the very end, Herman did a good job of capturing his photo. He shot down a little bit lower right at the bug and gave it a real nice background to it. So this one had absolutely no edits because they're two completely different photos. The point I'm trying to bring up here is when you're shooting, try and get your subject in the shade. Okay, this is cool, and we're going to do it rather than just kind of showing you the difference. But I want to show you kind of a nice feature. Oops. So we're going to rotate the image, and then we're also going to use a radiant. We're also going to use a radiant, a radial gradient, so that we focus the light. So it looks like there's a spotlight coming down on that second one, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So we'll show you how to do that real quick. And again, all this is in the workbook. I explained everything pretty much. So I'm going to create a virtual copy of this. And if you notice, Anon, I screwed up. I had two photos highlighted. So how many virtual copies? So whatever you have highlighted gets removed. So on this one, I'm only clicking that. So I'm going to click a virtual copy of it. So here's the trick. If you ever want to rotate your images in in the develop mode, all you do is right click and see where it says rotate left or right. So you don't want to go to the crop tool, you just want to do it right here. It's a lot easier. So see how we got this all set up right here? So now it's at the right angle I kind of would like it to be. So I'm going to darken the entire image to where I want it to be. Okay, you guys ready for this magic? You ready? We're going to go to the masking tools and we're going to click on radial gradient. So what we're going to do is we're only going to mask a circle. So I'm going to click here and just kind of make my circle roughly about the size I want. And then you go here, you can kind of move it. You can kind of turn it however you like. Or you guys see how I'm doing this?
Mhm.
So here's the deal. If you notice, this one has a feather of 57. If you don't want a lot of feathering, you would move it to 0. And see how the light just drops right off? It's very sharp. I would still do about 30-ish or so. So you get a nice layering off of it. Okay, guys, this is on you. How do I make the inside of the radial gradient brighter than the rest of it?
Exposure.
There you go. That's all you do.
Yeah.
Sometimes I add a little bit of shadows just because I'm me. You guys see how it worked? Is that easy or what?
Oh,
So what we showed was the radial gradient under masking. We masked an area using the circle, and then we applied the effect, and it only talks to that mask. If you look up over here, see how you can see that it added a mask radial? So Jeff, my question to you is, can I add another mask on top of this?
Yes.
Sure.
Yes.
In Georgia, the correct response is yeah, buddy. Sure can. So you can keep adding masks for different areas. Say, for example, on this table, I could mask out the table and add another mask for that as well. But for right now, I'm pretty cool with it.
How about the invert? Invert the mask and then darken.
Right. Hylos is bringing up a good point. If you notice, let me do Control Z. So I'm back in time. See, every time I press Control Z, I go back. But Jeff knows the real answer, which is to use the history over here. So if I go here and I use the radial gradient from the very beginning, oops, a little bit too big there. And let's say I want to, again, just kind of add a little bit of exposure and add a little bit of shadows. If you notice, everything else around it is still the original exposure. So what Hylos is doing, if you right click on the mask you have right now, you get the option of duplicating and inverting the mask. So now I'm talking to everything else instead of what's in the mask. So from here, I can lower the exposure for everything else other than what's in the center of the mask. So remember growing up in school, there was an expression that there's 100 ways to skin a cat. That's one thing about Photoshop and Lightroom. There are different ways of doing the same thing. So if you find a different way, it's like Jeff really enjoys using the history. I enjoy doing Control Z and stepping back. It's very quick for a couple. And we both get the same effect that we want, just doing it a little bit differently. Okay, here's one that was taken. So here's the before and after. Here's the power of Melissa's clarity and contrast. So I'm going to jump out of here. I'm going to go to this image, make a virtual copy. And like an idiot, I still had them both selected. Oh, well. All you have to do is play around with I think I remembered I jerked the exposure just a little bit, but the beauty is the clarity right here. Watch what happens. See how it just gives it a nice feel? And when you're doing a graphic, this is really kind of a nice thing. Dehaze is perfect if you want your blue skies to be bluer, or if you want to give a grunge look. Dehaze is a nice way to go. So so the key thing is just kind of play around with this stuff a little bit. Any questions about how quickly we just changed the look and feel from this to this?
I just want to add a little comment about dehaze. I think it's dehaze. Sometimes you can make a background look foggy or make it more clear by using dehaze and sliding it back and forth.
You sure can. Absolutely.
That was awesome.
It looks very graphic.
So here's Rob's elephant ear leaf. And the only thing I changed on it, I didn't think I cropped in anymore. Well, Rob, I think this is your final. This is what you changed it to. The only thing I changed.
Yeah.
If you
I
notice right
liked
up
when I cropped down a little bit, I liked it kind of became almost like an S curve in that.
Yeah, it's very nice.
Yeah.
So watch what happens when I hit the auto button. I recommend you guys do this to almost every photo. See how it just bang, it applies an effect. And if you don't like the effect, what's the keyboard keys you hit? Control what?
Control Z.
You got it. So I don't like what it did, so I just hit Control
Yeah.
Z. So I think
Yeah.
Rob was doing was he wanted to get rid of these red flowers over here and stress his S shape right over here. So,
Yeah.
so he probably kicked the whites a little bit of exposure, a little bit of shadows. See how those reds just pop out very nicely? And then he just kind of cropped down a little bit on these guys, still keeping his red, because that's what he was really interested in. Rob, I may not be cropping exactly like you wanted it, but pretty close. So let's say Rob did this, but he notices down here, these flowers do not contribute. He wants to get rid of them. So I posed the question to you guys. What tools would you use up here for a specific area to kind of get rid of this? We're not talking about making it darker or lighter, but just to get rid of it.
Band-Aid.
Band-Aid, you want to heal that puppy. Okay. Hylos, would you use content aware, healing, or stamp?
I would try the stamp tool first, I think.
Okay. So if you notice the stamp tool, just by moving the top of my mouse with the button on top, my mouse recognizes I can change it. The other way you can change the size is right here, or like you guys said earlier, with your control in the plus and minus brackets. That's how you can change your size of things. If you hold down the alternate key while you're doing that, you can change the feathering. But on mine, I just do it like this. So I'm going to do what Hilo says, and I'm just going to use the stamp tool. That's what we're doing, right, Hylos?
That's exactly right. I also want to know,
Yeah.
you know, that we've got 6 witnesses that you're going to do what I told you to.
Right.
That's the first, y'all.
Okay. He's killing me.
That's great. Yeah.
Are you guys noticing as I move around the stamp tool, it's cloning from that area?
Yeah.
So the nice thing you do is just kind of play around with it a little bit till you hit an area that's good enough, and then you'll just let go. So if you look at it and say, not bad, and then you say, you know, I want to do something a little bit different. So if you click on it, watch what happens when you use the content aware tool. It changed a little bit, but there's a little bit of red down there that I don't care for because Rob wanted to get rid of it. I hit the healing tool, and with that one, you still kind of move it around a little bit too. It's a little bit different than the stamp tool. I think, Melissa, it has to do with texture, but I don't know for sure. I just, as you use the tools, you just kind of go with it. So I would go with the tool that Hylos used originally. which was the stamp tool. And just kind of go with it. And to make to your point, if you wanted to lower the sharpness of it, you could play with the charity, but remember it talks to the entire image when you're on that one. You guys cool with how Rob did it? Oh, I'm sorry. So the only thing I did to Rob's image was up here at the stamp tool, this little
Yeah.
thing right there. And you know, bing, bada, boom, we're done. If Rob wanted to make the red area just a little bit brighter, how would you guys do it?
The hue.
Actually, you can do it that way. So let's go down to HSL. If you want to do it this way, I would stay away from hue because you just want to talk to the reds, right? And if you go
Okay.
pure saturation and
Saturation. Yeah.
okay. So if you wanted to pump the reds up a little bit, you can go left or right and kind of play around with it. But I think what you guys are really saying is luminance. So see how you can just make it a little bit brighter? The beauty of this, you're only talking to the reds. Now,
Mhm.
you guys have your seatbelts on. Let's say, for example, there's some red and there's some green and there's some other stuff in there, and you're not really sure what color it is. If you click on this little button right here next to saturation or luminance, it's a picker tool. And it will go in there if you click on it and go up or down. See how it's talking to it? But I want you to look over on the right side. Do you see how it's picking up on? There's a little bit of orange in there too. So it's kicking the oranges up at the same time because it thinks Rob wants to get everything in that area, just not the reds. So just a handy little tool to use right there. So are you happy with that, Rob?
Yeah, that looks great.
I think you did a nice job with this photo. Thank you. So
It's a
the only thing
beautiful photo.
the only thing Umet recommended differently was going this way. But you know, I would say every judge we have thinks a little bit differently. Wouldn't you guys
Yeah,
agree?
right. Yeah.
Yep.
So 100 ways to skin a cat. So
Hey,
here's
can we
what
talk about, sorry.
I'm sorry. What's up?
I was wondering if you could show them the hue sliders for a second because they're really fascinating.
I'm going to do that on the very end.
Ah, gotcha.
So on this one, we got the photo. I got the left edge right here. I want that to go away. What tool would you guys use?
Rob.
Got it. So Jeff, this one's for you. You notice that the lock's on?
Yes.
Watch what happens when I move it. See how it keeps the same aspect ratio? So I want the freedom to move this however I want. So Jeff, how do I unlock the crop tool so I can move each side
Mm.
individually?
You're gonna have to go up into the crop and straighten area and unlock.
click on the lock.
Click on it. Click on
There
the
you
lock.
go. You got it. You see now I'm only moving that one edge. And if I want to, I could move up this up just a little bit. And I could bring the roof down just a little bit. But each edge is independent. I do it one at a time. And when you're done, I just double click, it's done. Okay, you guys ready for the magic? We continue on. We got this black box up here, and we got this umbrella sticking out on the right side. What tools would you guys use to remove those from the photograph?
Mask.
Band-Aid again.
Probably the Band-Aid and the stamp tool.
Okay, Anand, your choice. Which of the three tools would you like to use to remove this umbrella?
The last one is at the stamp tool.
Stamp tool, okay.
But
So
we
again,
can also use a mask, right? We can also use the mask tool.
you can use the mask, but the mask doesn't clone. What we're doing now is when you use the healing brushes, it's cloning from different parts of the image. So they're both different,
Got it.
but they do different things. Okay, so I'm just going to use and draw this around there. Anand, do you have your seatbelt on?
Yeah, I have.
Is that cool or what? Okay,
So-
Karen, I want to knock out this black box up here. Which of the three tools would you like me to use?
I do
On
the
left
same
of
thing
it.
with the Band-Aid.
Sure, that's fine. If you want, you could try content aware, of course, but this stamp tool is working pretty good. Let's see how it works. Okay, it didn't work exactly, but see, it's saying I'm cloning from this area right here. Watch what happens when you move it to a different part of the image. See how it kind of fixes itself a little bit? It's still there a little bit, so I'm just going to swoop up again.
Do you ever just zoom in on the part of the picture you're working
Oh,
on?
How's that? So watch what happens. So I'm going to go back to this. And Karen, I want you to, so this is where we were. And thanks, Karen. That's probably a good idea to show you guys. Watch what happens when I use the content aware. You want to get a little bit of the shadow as well. And I find it's best just to do little steps first. So not a bad job. Watch, let's see what healing does.
Hmm.
Sometimes it takes more than one swipe through it. I personally enjoy the stamp tool a lot, but it all depends where it's sampling from. So because it's right here, we can move this down and maybe get a cleaner area. And I got to tell you, you can play around with this and suddenly go back to another tool, and it's like magic.
So is this what we use for removing a background?
I'm sorry, what about the background, Anon?
So if I have a portrait and you want people stand in front of a green screen, right? Or they want to replace that green screen with something else, how do they do that? Like a person is in a photo studio in front of a green screen, yeah? If I want to replace the green screen with some other background, how do they do that?
I'm not really sure I understand your question.
So I take a picture of a person in front in a studio, yeah, in a photo studio, in front of a green screen as a background.
Okay.
So if I have to replace that green screen with something else, how do they do that?
Okay, I'm jumping out of the program, so don't get freaked out here. Is Joy on the call? I don't think so, is she?
I'm here.
Okay, we're gonna skip over your picture then. So we're gonna pick Jeff sitting down here. So on this picture, we got Jeff. So what tool would I use to isolate? This is your question, right, Amanon? What tool would I isolate Jeff from the background?
Correct.
That's not me, buddy, but okay.
Okay, so we know this guy clones. What's the other tools we can use to isolate a subject? So here it is right here, subject. So Anon, if you're shooting a person against a green background or against a white wall or even bricks, you could use this tool to kind of separate it. If you notice, it picked up Jeff and the dog. That's easy to fix. You just hit minus brush, make the brush bigger, and the dog is not selected, and this little bit down here is not. So now we're just, my flow is not up to 100. Let me do that. It'll be cleaner now.
Yeah, that's cool.
Okay,
Awesome.
so here's the trick. What you do, we showed this once before, on the image, on the icon in the layer, you right click and you duplicate and invert the mask. So now everything but Jeff is isolated. So if I wanted to make the dark ground black and Jeff like that, you could do it that way. If you notice, there's still part of the dog that's screwed up there. But are you kind of getting the idea how you isolate a subject?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you,
Okay.
Pat. Yeah.
So it's right here under masking, and that's the magic. Okay, so let me get back in game. I gotta be honest with you, when I did this thing, it was a lot cleaner. It was a lot easier when I did it. So I'm just going to show you the final product. I'm cheating it and just showing you how I cleaned it up. But if you notice, when I cleaned it up, I missed some areas too. But I took out the wires there, and I'm going to use the stamp tool just to kind of get that little thing right there. Kind of move it over a little bit. What I don't like is how is the shading is off a little bit. But I mean, it's a tool there. If you guys have Photoshop, Lori, I think you said you have Photoshop in the beta version. There is
No,
a
I don't. I just have Lightroom.
okay.
So this is
Within-
my problem. Whenever I try to do this, it never comes out clean. It always seems to be, I mean, I don't know how to choose that area so that you don't get this patchy appearance.
A part of it is the feathering, Herman.
Right.
So if I increase the feathering when I do this, it softens the
Okay.
effect just a
Okay.
little bit. So to be honest with you, I should have feathered just a little bit more. Karen, this is the problem with zooming in. Because I mean, this thing's like a teenager. It starts grabbing all different areas on the screen. So if you notice now, see how it's a little bit softer, Herman?
Mm-hmm.
Around the edges, it smooths a little bit. And what I did on that is I increased the feathering. So it is kind of a gradation of the effect. So to take that one home, let's say I want to knock out this in the wall, bing, bada, boom, it's gone. Let's say, for example, down on the bottom. Oh, I cleaned it up already. Let's say, for example, I want to take out this kind of, well, this is going to suck because I got the I got this as well. All I'm trying to show you is whenever you're cloning, if you turn the feathering on, it softens the edges so it blends in a little bit better.
Okay.
There's not a tool in Lightroom. So on this one, I would lower the feather to 0. Click on this and delete it. And just kind of go straight down and over. It's not going to be perfect, but you get the idea. And see how it's pretty good. The problem with feathering now is it's got that really sharp edge. So there's some things that you just want to kick into Photoshop, and this is one of them. Really, I would just do this in Photoshop. You guys cool with it? So here is before. Well, not really before. This is before we went crazy. And this is the after when I did it yesterday. This stamp tool, it's amazing. So I think I gave it away. What tool would you guys use here? I want to take this leaf out. How about if I use the stamp tool? How is
How about the
that?
stamp tool?
Think
Yeah,
about
how about the
stamp
stamp
tool,
tool?
man.
Okay. So here's, guys, it's this easy. Bing, bada, boom, and just move it around to wherever you want it to be. If you notice, it's pretty big, so I think I'll make it just a little bit smaller. And we're going to use the other 2 tools to show you the effect of. So
You recommend a separate mouse or a pen or something versus trying to use your pad mouse on a laptop? Seems like it limits you.
yeah. So watch what happens. So that's using the stamp tool. If you notice, it's not bad healing. It's just a little bit of a different feel to it. And then content aware has another feel altogether. I don't care for content aware because it's got this other edge right here. I would probably go with the healing one to kind of clean it up. And again, just maybe a little bit more of the feathering to kind of soften the effect of it all. You can even go up above it a little bit. and it's pretty much gone. If you notice, when you use these tools, you gotta, except for the content aware, you have to move where it's sourcing from and just play with it, and it really comes out with a good effect. Okay, here's our first one with transform. So if you look at this flag, it's not really vertical and horizontal. You guys see that? It's off just a little bit with the blue,
Okay, yeah.
blue edge. Typically, most of the time, I would just come down here and hit auto under transform. See the transform header? And bing bada boom. It did an okay job, but I want to show you how to use guided. So I'm going to go back to guided. And what you do is on guided is you get 4 lines to draw. So I'm telling Lightroom, I really want this one to be horizontal. I really want this one to be vertical. I really want this one to be vertical. And you're seeing how it's kind of adjusting as you go through. And you don't have to use up all 4. I only used 3, and it was good enough. So on this one, I went to crop, and I used the Jeff Estes unlock feature. And I would just bring the white in just a little bit so it's not quite as apparent. And I would go and use the Melissa clarity to watch what happens here. See how it just gives it a nice feel? I boost the whites just a little bit to let it show through. So, well, that's the final one. When I did it, this is how it looked on mine. I darkened the clarity a little bit stronger to kind of give it that kind of edgy look. You guys cool with it? And again, all these instructions will be written out for you. I want you to get comfortable thinking about which tool to choose and what the effect is. So here's one, a tree. The thing I didn't like about this tree was this little bit right there. So how would I remove just this little portion of the tree?
Personally, I'd crop it.
Yes, you can crop it, absolutely.
You can.
The only problem I have with cropping is see how I don't really have room to breathe right here.
I would do like
Yeah.
Uma did and crop it completely out and just flatten out the tree trunk, I guess. But I find the clone tool in Adobe Photoshop a lot easier to use.
Maybe
So-
crop it part of the way and have a tiny piece that you have to.
I'm gonna
stitch
use
out.
content aware here.
Mm.
And sometimes you just have to play with the different ones, but that's how you kind of go around and doing it. I got to tell you, I think my Lightroom understands you guys are here because it was a lot more forgiving when I was doing this without. I mean, I had this stuff nailed perfectly, and then Lightroom's saying you're showing off, so we're going to screw you up. I'm just going to make another stab at it. But the point I'm trying to bring here is the healing brushes, the Band-Aids, as Hylos calls them, are basically cloning tools. So they're taking information from another part of the image. So the content aware says, I'm not telling you where I'm getting it from. I'm just going to do it for you. And of course, the healing does a little bit different.
I just find that it takes it from takes it from the wrong spot or a lot of the time.
Yeah. Yeah, sometimes you can just kind of trick it.
Yeah.
So when I did it before, this is how it looked. So go figure. Okay, now we're going to use a preset. So here's a picture Joy took. It was along the wall, and I really liked the photograph. The 2 things that bothered me were the wooden floor here, or wood, and this yellow color. And I thought to myself, why don't I try and use a preset? So I'd like to introduce you guys to the left side of the frame where you kind of roll up, and you'll see one of the options on here other than history that Jeff knows about very nicely, is one called presets. So the one I used to fill this was called, when I see it, I'll know it, so kind of bear with me. Punch. Where is punch? Yeah, here it is. So if you notice, I just moved it and I fooled around with all the black and whites, but the one I really liked was the one called punch. So I clicked on that. There's no color. I mean, what a deal. It's looking pretty good.
Mm.
So we're almost done here. And if you wanted to play around with it a little bit more, you could go up and you can do contrast. So contrast kind of forces things to black and white. And so if you notice, I got the contrast all the way up, and I'm going to crop down just a little bit to kind of lose that edge right on there. And I'm going to raise it because I want that lower left edge to come out at a diagonal. So I'm just going to crop to there, and bing, bada, boom, there you go. So, Jeff, I can't remember what that key is. There's a key that'll take you all the way back. So there's the before.
Control Z.
No, I mean,
or history to take it
yeah,
all the way.
history. But there's one
That's
key
not a
that,
key though. That's a button.
yeah. So are you guys seeing how this has more of a graphic punch to it? Something to consider. Omid elected to kind of hang with the blue, which is very nice. It's just two people do it differently. And you know what? You'll do it differently as well. Just showing you a technique. Okay, this is really cool. Picture of the sidewalk with the gutter. What tool would I use to straighten the green window right there?
Geometry.
Transform.
Yeah, that's what it's
Transform?
called on the iPad.
Transform?
But in here, it's called transform. So again, I can hit auto. And auto does an okay job. Okay, I'm happy with auto. So I'm going to hit crop on here. So is there any part of the image you guys would crop out? Or is it all okay?
Mm,
If it's all okay, that's fine.
I think that curb on the bottom.
Okay. So with that song,
How about
so-
that black spot in the middle?
Okay, but I'm just
Yeah, on
talking
top.
cropping right now.
Oh, okay.
I'm not sure about the circle at the bottom here.
Okay,
That-
that's not exactly cropping. So Herman, if you wanted to keep the circle, we would get rid of that by using one of the Band-Aids.
Okay.
Right now, I'm just trying to figure out where I want the crop line.
Okay.
Okay, how about if we leave it there? How's that?
That's good.
So I'm just going to double click on it. Okay, so there's a black spot right here. There's a big black hole right here. There's a circle right here. How do I get rid of those?
And
Band-Aid again.
Band-Aid. I'm just going to stick with the healing brush right now. If it's good, fine. If not, we'll swap it. Is that close enough for right now? It is. But if it's not, you can play around with it and just move it around like that. So this big hole right here, guess what? Just going to paint over a little bit. If you move your cursor, it shows you where it's drawing from, and that's pretty darn good.
Yeah.
So Herman, here's your little pipe cover right here.
Yeah.
We're going to use the Band-Aid to cover it up. It went a little bit crazy. It went there. Let's move it down to the sidewalk. And sometimes this thing gets a little bit funky, and you have to do it in little pieces. So I'm just going to do that one first. And then we'll come back and do this one. And if that's not quite right, you can kind of play around with it. And then if you say, well, what if I use the content aware tool? So it's showing something entirely different. I don't like it. Here's the stamp tool at work. It's very much like the healing brush. Okay, so we're done with all that. Here's a really nice effect I want to show you. So let's say this is dark at night. So how do I make this scene just a little bit grittier? I'm going to use Melissa's clarity and kind of darken things up, and maybe a little bit of dehaze, kind of make everything just a little bit darker. Okay, you guys ready for some radial gradient magic?
Hmm.
How do I get to it, guys?
Mask.
You got it.
Yes.
Remember there was one right here called radial gradient?
Radial gradient.
I'm going to start outside of the circle. Come in just a little bit. See how the red area is showing me what's going to be affected? And I got my feather at 57. I'm going to raise that up to about 85. So the edge is going to be softer. Okay, you guys ready for this one? This is pretty cool. See how it kind of looks like there's a light right there. So if you like, you can move your radial gradient into the picture just a little bit further. I like to jerk shadows up at the same time. And there you go. So when you look at it, it just kind of looks like there's a light right there on the side. And it adds a little bit of interest to your photograph because it's a little bit different lighting situation. Have you ever noticed when Melissa did the modeling learning workshops, how she had like a hair light off to the side? So this side of the head was a little bit lighter than the rest of it to add a little bit of interest to your photograph. Just think of this as a Windows highlight. Hair light.
Really cool trick.
Yeah, there you go.
I tried to use the linear gradient the other day and it affected the whole image, and I'm not sure why. I was trying to darken the sky.
Okay, let's see if we got one with sky. Okay, so let's say for this one. Okay, so we got linear gradient where we want to do this guy, right? So the first thing I would do is click on sky. I'm sorry, Melissa. I'm cheating. And then you could kind of play around with it just however you want it. I would go with dehaze on the sky in a heartbeat.
I think my biggest problem was that my sky had no detail. So no matter what I did to it, it just didn't work. It was pure white. It was just gone.
See how
I
you,
found that the sky works pretty well.
I mean,
generally.
really.
That looks amazing.
Sometimes if you look closer, and I really haven't played around. I'm not a big one to fool around with the sky, but this one did a very nice job around the leaves. A very, very nice job. And even in here as well. So I think it did fine. So Melissa, to answer your question, I'm not going to answer it. I'm just going to show you. Come on, Pat, you can do it. Select sky. And it works pretty good.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
So yeah, dehaze is the key there. Okay, so let me get back. Okay, so here are Joyce's tomatoes. So she took this photo. So how would you guys make this a little bit better?
Might crop out Georgia peaches since it's not peaches.
Yeah, if you want to, you could do that.
I'd raise the bottom just a little bit, just to underneath the Georgia peaches.
Oh, to include just you mean like there?
Yeah.
Okay. How about that right edge? Can we come in a little bit?
Yeah, you got an extra tomato in the end of the box.
Okay, so I'm looking at the distance right here to kind of match up with the distance right there, and that seems to be about it. Okay, so there's a little spot in the bottom right-hand corner I want to fix. What tool would I use?
Band-Aid.
And then which one would you like?
How about the stamp one?
Up
I'll
to,
probably do the stamp.
Okay, so I'm gonna lower my brush just a little bit, go over that. See, it kind of went up there as it got a little bit crazy. So you just pull it down this way. And for me, that's good enough. You guys cool with that?
Mm-hmm.
yeah, that's good.
We got the upper left and upper right corners too.
I'm gonna keep with your stamp tool and just kind of go over it just a little bit. See how it kind of pulled down from there? But if I move it back over the other line, see what you're getting? You're getting a clone from underneath right up there. Is that pretty cool? So if you wanted to continue that way, that's a way. And then you could go over here and then just kind of clean it up that way. Or you can say the heck with it and just do this and say, I don't want to see the ridges at all. And then you just kind of play around with it and get it kind of close to an edge that kind of works well. Now, I will tell you, I would have done the first one, but this cleans it up pretty nicely. And if it doesn't work the first time, guess what? You can go back and try it again. If it doesn't work exactly right for you, just take it in smaller chunks and kind of play around with it, and it'll work just fine. See how it looks like a boot right now? That's not the best shape. I would just do a straight line at first and then just play with it from there. So, like right there, see how it's a little bit nicer? And then I would just take this. Guys, I'm sorry, there's no easy way of doing this. You just got to play.
Yeah. The only problem is you start and you look at your watch and it's midnight. And you're still trying to get the edge right.
So with the other side, I would do the same thing right here. I would clean this up so the cardboard was all gone. This may be too big an area. Bing, bada, boom, it worked good enough. I want to get rid of this little edge right here. Now, this worked for me this afternoon. I make no promises on this one. I make no promises. But here's what I'm doing in my head. I'm thinking, where is another tomato that has an edge like that? So you can move this around wherever you want to another edge that kind of matches up with, with that tomato. And you can just kind of play around with it. I mean, just have fun. Obviously, it wouldn't be there, but you can really have a lot of fun with this, and it's kind of like magic. So Herman, in this one, I would increase the feathering so it kind of blended in just a little bit better. And then guess what? You can kind of clean up around this. But I heard someone say I would do this in Photoshop, and that's exactly where I wouldn't be screwing with this in Lightroom. Okay, so here's before. Oh, I'm sorry, I did before. So here's before. And here is here is after. So, what I want to show you in this one, this is, you guys got to do it. For portraits, it's not as effective, but it's vignetting. Remember before, how do we add a nice little vignette to this image right here? Oh, crap, I wiped it all out. Remember, there's a module at the very bottom. Remember this one called effects. I'm sorry. I'd already, let me move this back to 0. Again, let me move this to -11 or thereabouts. See how it's very minor, and you won't. So I'm going to turn it off. I'm going to turn it off and then turn it back on. You guys see how there's a difference? It's very subtle, and I recommend you do it in food photography and other. I really wouldn't use a vignette on a building like this because it's all about the building. But if you have something like this, a vignette may work for you. I don't know. But you know what? Just try it. And you can go the other way. You can add a white, kind of like the opposite effect if you like that one. So a vignette can either get blacker or it can get whiter. And you can play around with the midpoint a little bit as well. Okay, almost done. Got one more here. Okay, so Melissa, we're on Ms. Hugh right now. So guys, we got a couple modules here. I'm going to read them out to you. We have basic. We have HL in color. We have one called transform and one called effects. Which one can I use to change the hue of this water?
HSL?
You got it, my man. So Melissa, kind of guide me through this. How do we kick this to more of a green?
Well, what I really love about this is that you can tweak the colors that already exist in a picture just by sliding them left or right and changing them to a slightly different color. I think it's really cool.
Okay, so let's say in this example, I want to change this blue water to a little bit more of an algae green water. How would I do that? Would I use hue, saturation, or luminance?
Hue.
Okay.
Hue. Yeah, hue.
So,
I would
my
slide the
hue.
blue more toward the aqua on the left.
okay,
That's what I would do. Or maybe the aqua more toward the green.
okay. So I'm sliding the aqua
green.
this. I think for this, I would probably do more of a saturation with the blue. But you know, the nice thing about it is you can just play with it. And if you're not sure if that's really blue, remember you can click your little picker here and go in and click on blue, and you can fool around with it this way. So if you notice here, see how it's picking up a lot of blue and a little bit of aqua. And let's say we want to change that blue to a darker blue. There's probably what you were talking about there, right?
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
Or in the example, what we did is we changed it a little bit more to another green. The problem is we got to turn off the saturation on the blue to really hit it. So that's just how you play around with this stuff. It's really a great tool. So here is before and here is after. What I did on this one, I changed the hue more to green, and I added clarity and texture as well to kind of sharpen it a little bit. Okay, so here's what you're going to get in a day or two with the edits that Ilma gave me. I want to include them in the workbook. So I will send you a document like this that has basically everything in here. And then it'll explain how I changed that original image so it looks like the final ones. And so that, and we've got the files in a folder. And if, Rob, are you okay with me sharing your image with the rest of the group?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, I think it was you. And mostly Joy. Honey, are you okay with us sharing your images?
Sure, that's fine.
Okay. So with that, and Herman, I think I got your bug down here at the very end. So if you're okay with sharing it, I'll just send
Okay,
out.
that's fine. Yeah.
Okay, thanks. Okay, so I'm wrapping up now. Is there any one thing that we talked about that's not really clear that you feel like you really need to know?
I do have an
What-
idea.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
I have one question. So if I want to find the history, how do I do that?
Okay, so it's always on the left side.
Right. Yeah, I
Rob.
know that. Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
This is kind of crazy because it's not very.
1%.
So on the left side, you have when you're under the develop module, there are 4 choices here. So if you want to use presets, you have to close that back up so you can see the history. It's kind of frustrating, but this is how you do it right here. So looking at the history of this image, and I've documented this in the workbook, you can see how I stripped all the
Okay.
blue out. I added
Oh,
all
I
the
see.
green.
Yeah,
And like Jeff said, here's what it looked like when I started. And then as you go along, you can kind of click and see how the different effects affected your image. So here's something kind of cool that they've included this version of Lightroom. It used to be you couldn't delete all this extra stuff on the top without clicking each one and deleting it. Now you can right click on it and say, I want to clear all the history above that. I don't really use that this much, but there's been a couple photos that this came in very handy. Okay, so have I answered your question? How do you get the history?
yes.
And Melissa, I think you had something too, didn't you?
Well, yeah, I've got an idea that maybe we could test. There's been lots of times when I've tried out an effect or a preset, and I was wishing that I could put it on a layer on top of my image and then lower the opacity of it so that it's not so strong. And I am wondering if you can do that with masking, if you can put a mask on, but then apply a preset and then maybe lower the opacity of the mask, or is there some way to do layers in Lightroom that I don't know about?
Okay, so what you're saying is, oh, here, let me get one. So you're saying this tomato right here. What did you want to do to that?
Well, let's say if I was in Adobe Photoshop, I would want to add a layer on top of this, and then I would apply a preset to the layer to make it look more grungy. Maybe use a preset to add more clarity and make it look grungy. But let's say I don't like the preset, it's a little too strong. I'm wondering, is there a way to lower the opacity of the mask?
To answer your question, you're halfway there. So if you don't want to talk to a particular part of the image, I'm going to get out of the masks. Whenever you go into a preset, let's say, for example, I use this one black and white punch that I really like. It's my favorite. So let's say, for example, here it is here, but it's just too strong.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have your seatbelt on?
I do.
Okay, it's right here. See how you can lower the effect right here?
Oh, I've never seen that.
And guess what? It even gets harder.
Okay.
So you can even go higher with the preset.
That's cool. Has that always been there, or is that new?
No, it's new.
Ah, nice. Thank you.
Brand new with the last major update to Lightroom that was added in.
Okay.
Very
Yeah,
cool.
you're absolutely right. Sometimes you don't want that image just to smack you in the face. Sometimes, like for example, the brightness right here, you want to make it harder, lighter, or darker. I mean, this is nice. You can play around with it that way.
Wait, are you in the history palette right now? What are you in?
I'm in presets.
Oh, okay. Okay.
So in other words, under preset, these are all the presets right here. So gritty portrait, if I like that, you can play around with the different ones. I really don't use it that much.
Okay.
But say for this one, you look at it and say, oh, those look crazy. Well, you can play around with the amount that you're applying, or even double down and do it more. So
Okay.
you can have a crazy time with it. And again, if you just double click on the amount, it'll go back to 0, or in this case, 100.
That's great. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.
I've wished for that so many times.
Lori, for the lady who only has Lightroom, any questions?
No, I've been following along. It's been great.
Herman, anything I can help you with real quick?
I'm good at the moment, thank you.
Okay. And Anand, how about you? Oh, I think you may have dropped off.
No, he's dropped out.
Okay,
Yeah.
Karen, you've been very good about hanging through all this. Is there anything you're doing now on your iPad with Lightroom that's kind of crazy?
No, I think it just is a matter of practice, practice, practice. Just figuring out where all these parts are to go to.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I think Hilos, when we did the Lightroom about 2 years ago, I think I had a section where I had some YouTube videos that I liked a lot. So Karen, what I'll do is in the final one, I'll include a couple of Lightroom videos, and I'll see if there's one for the Lightroom Photoshop version, which is the iCloud one. For
You could use just the link.
yeah, and that's what,
Okay.
so I'll send you a link to the YouTube video.
Okay. Okay.
Are we about ready to stop the recording now?
I've been ready, Hylos.
Back up. Hylos is going to hit the button.